Ah, it's you again. Nice to see you. I actually wanted to speak to you about something. But first, let me just tell you that we are going to speak about a special power tonight. One that you definitely are not familiar with or have heard of. Because tonight we will go into something that I created myself. Yes, I, or Carisper, your guide in the Sanguine Archives, in which we explore the lore of the World of Darkness from perspective of and the focus on vampires, mainly Clan Bali. So let me be your guide for the memories of the blood for tonight, and let me show you what I mean, because in tonight's venture, in our lesson, we will actually look at something very exceptional. You see, you can actually become a discipline, which would be called the Amaranth, but more importantly, there is something that can create an entirely new discipline, and this something is usually tied to your circumstances of life before your embrace, or the circumstances of your death after that. It is why certain bloodlines have very unique disciplines that only they have and are impossible to learn for others. And you see, when I died, I actually froze to death. It was a fun part of my sire to throw me into not a regular pit of organs like we would use, but actually into a glacier, into a crack in it, hundreds of meters, well, maybe not hundreds, but a lot of. I fell very deep and crashed onto hard ice. It's a miracle that I survived that. I guess my ghoulish blood prevented worse. The thing is that all the corpses were frozen, and I had to get the heart filled with Bali blood out of the ice. Not just of rotting, decaying corpses, that would be easy. No, but with bare knuckles I had to crack ice that was apparently centuries old, from corpses who knows who old they were, and search the blood without the aid of smell, without the aid of anything visual, just the ice. And I had to break through it, and as of course I finally found the heart filled with the blood, it was completely frozen. I broke some of my teeth trying to crack and eat it and consume it, and I did. And with this was born the discipline of Kryonis, that only I and those of my blood wield, and maybe, who knows, you one day. This power of Kryonis deals with the powers of ice and cold and the frost. It is inherent to my blood. It allows you to conjure up snow if you want to, which of course isn't of much use, but you can also actually summon up solid ice, just like that. Solid ice that can be used as a dagger to kill those that you want to kill. Ice to freeze and preserve. Ice to shield you from harm if an attack comes in. The ice absorbs it instead. You can use it to chill and many things more. But let me just give you an introduction to what I mean and how powerful it can be if you throw a deadly icicle at your enemies, freezing them, throwing another to shatter them. Just like that. And of course it's just like ice, and it's so powerful if used correctly. You see, with a basic understanding of Kryonis, you can turn any liquid into ice instantly. You can walk on water by just freezing the water beneath your soles and make them freeze temporarily so you can just safely walk over it. You can use it to chill an opponent's blood, which is extremely powerful against vampires, because you see, by doing so you can prevent them from using speed, meaning celerity. It will just cancel out the effects of celerity. The more powerful you are, the more you can lessen their celerity. If they don't have any celerity at all, which is unlikely for vampires, but sometimes new ones don't have it, you can even slow them down by chilling the blood, making their movements so much tougher and so much slower, basically causing an inversion of celerity, making them so slow they can barely fight back. You can also use an Arctic presence, a cold wind that follows you around wherever you go and walk. It can be used to intimidate or just to make your presence known. It's of course quite supernatural, but not too outstandingly odd, not like someone will instantly recognize that you're a vampire just because it's cold around you, but it can make people very uncomfortable. You can use it for torture, or just to make sure that liquids in the room freeze. Also, with this basic understanding, you can gain a hydraulic strength. You know hydraulics, right? With this you can cover your muscles in ice, making them a bit tough to wield, but very, very resilient to damage. And more importantly, raising your physical strength as you gain the strength of an hydraulic press. With a little skill, you actually manage to summon up not just snow but solid ice, allowing you to summon up and create icicles out of the moisture in the air. Icicles so sharp and deadly they can actually pierce even a vampire's skin. You can use this weapon as a thrown weapon, as a distant weapon. You can even magically guide it if you know a little bit of thaumaturgy. You can actually create the ice bolt out of your own blood if you are willing to, and in that case it becomes as lethal as a werewolf's claw. You can cause frostbite on contact, causing the touched area to freeze and cause all the suffrage coming from that, which is quite damaging to mortals. And while it won't just kill or really bother vampires too much, it definitely makes them look ugly for a while. And of course, you can just spend some blood to summon up big amounts of snow, meaning enough to bury a car. With some skill in Kryonis, you can create an ice shield, similar to the blood shield that you may know from the puff of blood from thaumaturgy. But in this case, the moisture around freezes, which means that you require less blood to use this. However, it actually will be able to soak any kind of damage, as it's still a magical shield, but it is very vulnerable to bashing damage and might shatter if a hammer hits it. Hard enough, that is. You can also summon up a wall of ice with this understanding and create a 2 or 3 meters high and long wall of solid ice, which is quite a hindrance and allows you to block off a passage at least temporarily. If you are skilled in Kryonis, you can actually create a frozen weapon, which means that you can layer your weapon with ice, making the weapon chill your opponent's blood on hit, cancelling out celerity effects, and more importantly, causing additional damage because the ice is extra sharp. Also, it causes wounds that just bleed. It will stop eventually, but mortals and vampires alike will bleed quite a bit before it stops. With this level of understanding as well, you gain the ability to summon the blue flame. It's a flame cold to the touch that burns like normal fire and engulfs anything it touches, including ice and walls. However, instead of burning something to ash, it will cause frostburn and freeze it solid over time. If you're good in Kryonis, you gain the ability to deep freeze. With deep freeze I mean you touch someone, and if they fail to resist, are rendered completely unable to move at all. Mortals die instantly from this. Cainites are basically in torpor and absolutely helpless. At this level, if you manage to deep freeze them, you can also prevent them, of course, from using any discipline, as their blood just won't comply. if they resist it, they will still take quite some serious cold damage, just like as if it were fire. If the target is deep frozen, you can cause it to shatter into 1,000 pieces, instantly destroying or killing anything trapped inside. If you're very good with this power of Kryonis, you can actually summon up an avalanche, enough snow to bury an area. And it can be, depending on your skill and how good you are, be anything from a single car to an entire city block, or even a smaller town or city completely. It will of course also kill all animals and insects in the area and drive the others away. Not to mention that it causes a lot of trouble for mortals. At this level you can also get a body of ice, which means that you basically turn yourself into an ice-covered body, an ice layer around you that reflects sunlight and can protect you temporarily from fire. Basically, if you are exposed to fire while having this layer around you, it will just melt, leaving you drenched instead of burned. But more importantly, the ice is so reflective that sunlight won't be able to harm you. However, you also won't really be able to move because, it's ice, you're freezing yourself solid to some degree, but you still get the ability to use your abilities of the blood, the disciplines. If you are exceptional with the discipline, you can summon up a hailstorm, a mighty one that covers a huge area, doing bashing damage in the area. However, if you are really good at it, you can even form the hailstorm into icicles, being much more lethal. You can also cause a prison of ice, which just surrounds your target with ice. The good thing about this is that it leaves your target absolutely unable to use their blood powers, or really most supernatural powers. Even mages won't be able to use their special magical powers or use any of their quintessence while trapped this way. I'm not sure how well it works against werewolves though. Anyway, at the mastery level of this discipline, you gain Boreas Breath. Bori, the legendary ice giant, can freeze a target in time until the spell expires, which means that the target trapped so is immune to all forms of damage, but also rendered unable to do anything. It's a good way of hibernating, if you will. At this level of mastery of this discipline, you can also cause an Arctic winter, which prevents the sunrise for one day up to several weeks in an area. The sun will rise on the rest of the planet though, so this is definitely a quite strange happening for mortals, and they will remember it too. It's definitely supernatural, but it can't really be traced back to you, and being able to causing the sun not to rise for an extended amount of time that you control can be very beneficial. You can also do the same with the Arctic summer, which basically does the opposite and prevents the sun from ever going down for several amount of time. If you achieve Grand Mastery, you gain the ability of Emir's Scream. You can hurl an area into an ice age with temperatures of minus 50 degrees Celsius and all effects that causes, rendering technology useless that wasn't built for Arctic conditions, makes it much more difficult for vampires to rise, and of course is absolutely deadly to the wildlife and the people around there. If you perfected this, you can invoke the ancient ice, temporarily lowering your own generation. Becoming an avatar of ice, you gain additional protection against aggravated and lethal damage, but you can take extra damage from bashing. You can gain stamina and strength as well as immunity to sunlight for a while. Fire won't be able to harm you, however it comes at the price of looking like an ice golem. Which is kind of nasty because you also take damage from the cold yourself. To some degree, because it's supernatural cold. You become completely immune to regular cold though. A special thing about this is that if you practice this power and awaken it in your blood, if you master Kryonis, you actually gain some specific weaknesses too. As example, if you are destroyed, you don't burn up to ash, you actually just disperse and explode into snow and ice dust. Similarly, if you do this and you walk this path for a while, you will also be able to give your ghouls immunity to the effects of cold by just imbibing your blood and becoming immune to the cold yourself. However, you will also be able, or not able, you will also have to rest in snow, just like the Tzimitzi do in their home earth, or otherwise you won't be able to really recover. If you have Daimonion and Kryonis on some skill level, you can actually allow your flames of hell to chill and freeze the target solid, basically using the powers of Kryonis through Daimonion. And similarly, if you are kind of okay with Daimonion but really good with Kryonis, you can allow your flames that you can hurl to deep freeze on contact, which is very, very useful, I guess. Now, I have told you about one of my top secret weapons, and it would be nice to share it with you one day, because I think Kryonis is brilliant for combat, but more importantly for hiding, and most importantly something completely unexpected that will leave other kindred stunned and shocked as you command the snow and the cold and trap them in the ice created of the moisture surrounding them. But I think now it's time to end today's lesson and leave the Sanguine Archives for tonight. I hope you learned something. It was I, or Carisper, the main scribe of the archives, giving you this lesson. If you want to help grow the archives, become a subscribe and help me copy ancient texts. Do not forget that if you go up, you have to make the ancient gesture of the thumbs up when you walk upstairs to disable the enchanted traps that protect the path. Ring the bell when you enter the door, or better said, if you try to leave, because otherwise it won't open. And tell your friends about this, so they owe you. Have a good night.